There was a space. At first it was a nothing space, or so it seemed. No walls or barriers limiting it, there was no end nor beginning to it. And yet came the feeling that beginning and end both began here. But nothing is as it seems, and little by little it could be seen that the space pulsated and had colour. Not colour as the eye could distinguish or try to describe, it was the colour of not having no colour. It shifted and changed, and took slow dances through the space it ranged, until it could be said the space had ceased to be space, but simply was. As the colour danced, it shifted and changed to reveal slowly the shadow of a figure. The figure had not been there before, nor yet had it arrived. The light had simply rearranged itself to reveal the form. The figure was tranquil, a still point in the midst of the dance. No victim of chance, but as certain of its existence as in the certainty that beginning and end had their being one with each other, here, at this point of eternity. The figure appeared to be seated, not on anything, nor at anything, yet seated. His features carried the air of thoughtful, inward contemplation. And joy. Solemn joy. Bubbling within, until the joy flowed out and mixed with the colour, danced with it, and gave the colour its life. The figure was alone, and it took a fragment of colour, moulded it and shaped it, till it became a pen of light. And it laid flat another swirl of colour, smoothed out hidden wrinkles with careful gesture, and with the pen of light began to write. A poem. The writer poured into his poem his heart of love, his heart of joy, and his longing. He spoke of the light and of its joining, of liquid light and its pouring, and how the stream took shape and form, and how the form found boundary and mooring. He brought to his poem a new thought of dividing, of space being empty and full. And he told of a fullness new to the light, around which it moved and to which it gave life, a new world taking shape in day's dawning. As the writer wrote his poem, under him formed a hillside, and as he spoke of trees, they budded around him. He spoke of fruit and flowers, of plum and cherry, of sun and showers and ripening berry. He wrote of wheat and fresh-scented heather, of storm clouds and heat, and of calm and of breath. As his pen moved on the page, the words took life, and joy found shape. Joy sang, and in the singing found its winging to the light. Flight of bird, flick of fin, all shapes, colours, serious, absurd, squat and thin. Living joy. Down the hillside and further than I could see danced joy, and filled the world. And the writer laughed, and joy found form. The writer would have stopped his poem, but he was still alone. So he bent his pen and wrote again. A new song this, filled of more of himself than he'd ever written before. He fashioned the words with care and signed them with his heart. He wrote words of pageantry and simple pleasantry, of fellowship and toddling footstep, of growing and learning, of knowing and yearning. And as his pen moved, again danced the words and took shape. Way down the hill to a flautist's gay trill, the cavalcade moved in its dance. They chatted and sang and passed in a throng to a plain at the foot of the hill. The writer smiled as they flowed from his page, then laughed with quickening delight. He threw down his pen and jumped to his feet and started off down in pursuit. Those down on the plain had leaped as they came, with great circles of whirl and of spin. But they slowed at his laugh, then stopped as he neared, and over their faces came change. Scarcely fresh from the page, yet some smiles became rage, and strange hush began to descend. They clenched hands the more tightly, drew their figures up rightly, and so they would not let him in. The writer stopped. Near ones turned their back. He held out his arms. The more timid drew back. "I can show you a new dance," he offered. They replied, "We'll not be bothered." And some found boldness to scorn. "I can write you a song filled with life." But they yawned, "We've our own, and we'll trouble you not to bring yours." They danced once again, but around him this time, and they mocked as they laughed at his words. One mustered up boldness to slip in and trip him, and the writer lay sprawled on the ground. A child cried, but too few echoed fear, and a motherly apron soon stifled the tear. Some dancers showed doubt as he didn't cry out, but the rest called them names, as they hid from the shame of the man lying still on the dirt. The crowd surged and came forward, kicked his face, pulled him skyward, and rushed with him back up the hill. As they got to the top, they slowed, and then stopped, undecided about their next action. Then searching hands found the pen left on the ground, and the crowd chorused huge satisfaction. His cloak ripped apart, the writer hung, as the dart of light sped to his heart, and he died. As he fell, so the colour started turning to water, and great smears smudged the sky and the earth. In the ground appeared holes, trees began to dissolve, and great sobs now replaced the crowd's mirth. The colours all ran down the hill to the plain in a flood, like a great rainbow melted. And the trees became tears as the hills disappeared, and the people searched vainly for shelter. The flood swirled around the dead form on the ground, washing out the world's wasted debris. In the milling confusion of doubt, fear, dissolution, his death seemed the only reality. Those who had earlier hung back from the taunts of the dance risked now their last moments to find him. As they scrabbled and forced their way to his side, the flood gathered up the crowd in its grip. They reached him and then fell exhausted. Alongside they lay, lifeless and grey, as the last of the colour drained past them. There was a space. At first it was a nothing space, or so it seemed. But the nothing space again pulsated, shifted and changed, shifted and changed. Slow motion waves of shifting and changed is what's taken becomes what is given. And dark image flees in the light rearranged, as the shifting reveals not one form but many. Those who reached out and loved to the writer now carry the title of son and of daughter. With light at their head they form a great company, dancing and weaving to the joy born again. And death is thrown captive is the writer's new song. Come join my new dance, my daughter, my son!